Welcome to The Men of Tomorrow. It's a podcast that focuses on some of the tough issues for men, being in relationships, having those right conversations at the right time, making sure that we can feel connected with the people we love. I've got my son here. I think he's the kind of person I love, but I want to make sure that you get a lot of benefit from this. We're going to have fun. Join us. Kailash, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm awesome. I feel like it's cool, but weird to work with your son.
Yep.
I remember you as a little kid, and now look at you. You've all grown up.
Yes, 21 as
What?
of November. And you're getting old. What are you now?
I'm not old, thank you. I'm maturing, like
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
wine.
Yeah.
I'm maturing. Not that I drink, but good wine's mature.
That's
the
how
way
it goes. Yep. Let's start with introducing ourselves. How about you go first?
My name is Kamal Sama. I am Kailash Sama's dad. He tells me that he's raised me as a father. He's proud of raising me as a father. I used to be a monk. Then, from being a monk, I went into the corporate world. I started with an organization called McKinsey & Company. I then went into funds management with A&P Capital Investors. I was the head of strategy for a bank. Then I started 2 private equity funds, first in the IT sector and then in the biotech sector. I now run a leadership firm, and we've just clocked over about 50,000 executives. And I think what's been great about that is I've seen people go through stuff. And now they've been doing it for quite a few years. It's almost predictable, the stuff that people go through. Go figure. The people go, how did you know this? We've just seen 50,000 people go through this same journey. And I call predictable crises of life. There are predictable crises of life. And then if you can predict the crisis that you're going to have before you have it, you're going to be much more resilient. You're going to make sure you look after yourself, your family, your teams, your organization. The problem is, if this comes as a surprise, you go, boom, all that energy is going to try to solve the problem. So it's about preempting those challenges. And that's what this podcast is about.
I think when you normally talk about people going through challenges and I ask you, how do you know that? How do you know that they're going to go through these steps? You always talk about this idea of flight hours. And when you're talking to 50,000 executives, the problems that we think are unique to ourselves is something that a lot of us face. And it's just moments in time that we keep on repeating over and over again.
So what I think is that every 7 years, we're going to have a major crisis in our life. 7, 14, 21. So you're 21 right now, and I know that you're going to go through some stuff in your life. You're not going to know who you are. It's going to be weird. It's like when you were 14, right? So you didn't introduce yourself.
Yeah, we kept on talking. So my name is Kailash. I'm a TEDx speaker. I've been running my own business since I was 15, teaching public speaking kids. I've had experience in investment banking, management consulting, and venture capital. And I currently advise for a couple of other organizations on the side.
You're such an underachiever, Kailash. What are you doing with
Gotta
your
keep
life?
on doing
Seriously, what are you just? You got to focus and do hard work. I'm kidding. I love seeing you flourish. I've loved seeing you successful. But my biggest fear is, hey, what if I die? Who's going to look after you? Maybe you don't need looking after, and I get that. But I've been really privileged to have some men in my life that have helped and guided me. And to a certain degree, that's what this podcast is about. I wish when I was 21, I had people that I could talk to. Now, my dad was great, but he was a bit of an older generation. He didn't hang out like the way we hang out.
Yeah. And I think our relationship is great that it comes to a point where we've done everything from bike riding together to running businesses. We always go on walks with our fluffy dog named Zeus. But also we have that relationship where we're constantly curious. And because of that, we've tried new things from podcasts to running businesses. I'm curious to know, what is the thing that you've had the most fulfillment and enjoyment
doing together? There's a bit of an ego trip when people say, oh, your son's just like you. And I go, is that good or bad? So it is a bit of an ego trip.
Yeah.
And they say, chip off the old block, apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
So I'm a public speaker, and you've been on stage doing public speaking. I find it cool. I love the fact that we did joint keynotes together. Being on stage with your son is like mind-blowing. It's so cool. And I think you were 18 or 19. So I love that, but I think what I love about it is you helped me grow. And I think you said something is that we're the first person to tell each other good news.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. Now, obviously, I love talking to your mom and telling good news, but sometimes because she's a doctor, she doesn't get our world, like the business world, right?
Yeah.
Or public speaking or presentation skills. Sometimes we do something, oh, that's good, you're doing this keynote. No, like, don't you get it? This is a big keynote. This is something.
This is it. This is
I remember when I did the Telstra keynote,
Yeah.
like to 5,000 people,
Yeah.
I wanted to do that keynote about 20 years ago. And when
Yeah.
they asked me to do it, I went, wow, this is brilliant. She couldn't understand why it was such a big deal, but I think you got it.
Yeah. And I think one very interesting thing is because we're both in Sydney and the Sydney market is pretty small, is that sort of everyone knows each other. And I remember going to a festival, like tech conference, and someone came up to me and said, oh, you're Kamal's son. And I think it's very interesting to be known as that while also trying to make my way in my own personal journey. But I think if we go back to Men of Tomorrow, what was the reason for wanting to do this podcast?
So what I find as a bit of an older man, or let's say a bit of a more mature man, I see a lot of men struggling to understand what does it mean to be a man of today, if not tomorrow. I sometimes feel, hey, I've gone through this stuff. Let's have a chat about this. But also, I know lots of men that have gone through this stuff that you're about to go through or they're about to go through. Wouldn't it be cool if we gave them a cheat sheet? If we give them a cheat sheet, we make it better for them, it's going to be better for society. And there's a lot of challenges that we're facing right now. I'm a little bit scared of the world that you're going to live in. I don't know what's in store for you.
Yeah.
But I also think about all the other men or boys. It could be my sons, or it could be my brothers, my younger brothers, or my peers. And it would be really cool to have a way to have this conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's really curious, and the question to pose to you is, let's say my grandfather's generation, your dad's generation, what it meant to be a man is very different to what it means to be a man in my generation. What do you think is that biggest difference that we see? Because in a way, to say, oh, I'm a man, or I know what it means to be a man in the 21st century, is a challenging question, and I don't think anyone's figured out what that really means.
So I think the rules of being a man and what it means to be a man has always been in a state of flux. So too being a woman. But I think if I look at my dad compared to me, compared to you, I think the rules have changed faster, the same way society's changed faster. And I think there's a level of change we can deal with intrinsically.
Yeah.
But that's gone so far the other way. AI, freaking, like a year ago, it was just one website. Now it's in everything. Like ChatGPT, that you've seen it, like
the exponential growth.
Exponential growth. We saw mobile phones, and my dad saw landlines.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But I think when my dad was around being a man, the road rules were much more well articulated.
Yeah.
Men go to work, they come home. My dad never changed one of my nappies.
Yeah.
Although he loved me, he didn't do that because men didn't do that.
Yeah.
I changed a lot of your nappies.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could have helped around the house a lot more than I did because I didn't have those role models. Now, what I'm trying to get you to do is make sure you're with your partner is that you're defining those roles as well.
Yeah. And I think one interesting thing is when the world is uncertain of what it means to be a man, you'll get very polarizing figures. So we've suddenly seen the rise of Andrew Tate. Now, even though he's banned on so many social media platforms, he still has a large presence. And there's teachers even reporting that in primary schools and in high schools, there are people quoting Andrew Tate. Now, we all know the figure he is. What are the concerns you have with individuals following Andrew Tate, especially at such a young age?
I'm going to talk both as a man, as a father to a son, and as a father to a daughter.
Yeah.
And also the stuff that I'm seeing out there with people that come into our sessions and they say, hey, how do I talk to my son or my daughter about Andrew Tate? So I think Andrew Tate filled a vacuum.
Yeah.
People want direction. Like, there's so many choices these days. What he did is gave you a cheat sheet on what it means to be a man. Build up your body, treat women like shit. And I don't like that. So I really get upset by that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to make sure that parents help their sons fill that void.
Yep.
So that void is not filled by the Andrew Tates of the world.
Understood, yeah.
I think Andrew Tate is a very hurt human being. I don't know if he knows what it means to feel totally connected to somebody, to feel that sense of connection, the vulnerability, that authenticity. And what happens, I think, with your generation, it's a lot more inauthentic than us.
Yeah.
You know, like, you have to look good on Instagram. What's the deal with your Instagram page, by the way? You're always looking way too good. But we didn't have that worry, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this facade that you have to put up 24/7. We had to put up a facade when we went to a party and look good and have a shave. And
yeah. Now it's all the time.
That must be exhausting. So I think what Andrew Tate has done is fill the void. And if that void's not filled, it gets filled up by negative things rather than positive things.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done, and we've worked at it, it's not been easy, is to stay connected to one another. And it's knowing, like you talk about flight hours.
Yeah.
Good on you, but I think Andrew Tate's scary, and I think what we want to do is make sure we can fill that void.
I remember we once went out and we watched the movie Kingsman, which was that gentleman vibe that was a spy, but he also showed that chivalry that isn't really in today's society. I'm always curious that Andrew Tate is out there, but it doesn't look like there is a hero to his villain. It just looks like he's the hero because there's no one opposing him. If you were going to tell a 12-year-old, these are the people you should look at, where would you start? Because it's really challenging to find those people in today's society.
I think you're right. I think it's really hard to find role models because if you go to sports people, they always get into trouble. Like, seriously? You look at politicians, all these scandals are happening. I think it's really hard to find role models. That's why I think it's really important to find mentors. I think in your life, and you've done this, is you've found mentors. I think if your child is 12, and I remember when you were in 5th class, you must have been like, what, 10 or 11?
Yeah.
You had mentors in 6th class and 7th class. When you're in 7th class, you had mentors in 9th class. When you're in 9th class, you had mentors when you're in 12th class. But really importantly, you mentored other kids.
Yeah, because you always have to pay it back.
Yeah, I said pay it forward.
Pay it forward, yeah.
So you got to pay it forward, right?
Yeah.
You got to pay it forward. And to a certain degree, that's what I see you doing. That's what I'm doing. Like, I have a mentor by the name of Les. You know, he's helped me and guided me.
Yeah.
And I think some of the stuff that we're doing with this program, Men of Tomorrow, and the mentors that we're working on, is about paying it forward. So the most important thing that a 12-year-old can do is find mentors in their life, maybe an uncle, maybe an auntie, maybe it's a sports coach, that they can talk to that's not their parents.
Yeah.
Because you need a bit of that separation.
Yeah. And I think having that independence has been really helpful just to realize that the advice your parents give you is also advice based on their experience and insights. And that's not necessarily the path you want to go down for a lot of people. And just taking a different point of view counteracts their arguments and thinks about, well, what is good with their point of view and what is challenging.
You asked me about Andrew Tate, and I think one of the things that we really need to figure out is people talk about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And I think we need a new model. I think we need to talk about integrated masculinity. What does it mean to integrate that masculine parts of you?
Yeah.
And so many times we've said, no, that's bad. But no, there's certain parts of masculinity that's powerful. I say to you, testosterone's either a superpower or kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like, I saw when you, like we were talking about the 12-year-old, when you turned 14, you went, boom, you started to bulk up. You got a bit antsy with me. You started to get aggro with me. You started to take me on. Do you remember me saying, hey, I think you were about 12 or 13, one day you're going to want to kill me?
Yeah.
And then you said, no, I'm going to want to kill you, Dad. I love you so much. But then I think you were at 14 or almost 15, said, Dad, you know, think about wanting to kill you? I feel it.
Yeah.
So this big dose of testosterone that you're trying to get, that you've gotten.
Yeah.
And you're now trying to figure out what to do with that testosterone. The good thing is, and what we talked about, is that there are predictable crises of change, or there's predictable crises of growth. And for you, knowing that you're going to get this huge hit of testosterone, 7, 14, 21, 28, your whole testosterone profile is going to change. That's been really good for me to know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Andrew Tate's done. He said when boys are 7 or 14 or 21 or 28, they go into this void. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is trying to figure that out.
Yeah. I've always thought about if you could pinpoint one individual that is out there being the hero to Andrew Tate's villain, who could be in. I've really struggled with that. I haven't found someone. The closest person, which is not our generation, is Hugh Jackman. He has the ability to play Wolverine. He has the ability to also do ballet, to perform, to dance. But he's also a really good human being. So it's very interesting just to figure out if there's no one against Andrew Tate, he'll be just a hero.
That's a really good point. So I think, for me, Andrew Tate has been scary. I think what it's done is raised it into the consciousness and raised it into people are taking note of it.
Yeah.
So I think he was a voice for a movement.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, though, is that the hero is connection.
Gotcha.
So what I mean by that is that we need to feel connected. Men, boys, we struggle with connection. And there are 4 types of connection we need. Number 1 is connection to ourselves. When we eat too much, drink too much, you had that situation where you're too exhausted and tired.
Yeah.
I think when you're doing your year 12 exams,
Yeah.
you said to me, I don't even know who I am. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt disconnected to myself. And I know during COVID, when the business was about to crash and burn, I was really stressed out and I started to eat too much and I started to lose all my disciplines about yoga and my meditation. So I lost connection with myself. So that's connection to 1.
Yeah.
The next one is connection to people. I think we've lost that ability. You guys, your generation is so interconnected, it's not funny.
Yeah.
But you're disconnected as well. And I think our generation of men are disconnected as well. So we need to learn how to reconnect with people around us, people we love. And this is why we're doing this. Connecting in a relationship. What does that mean? And you've been in a relationship. You know it's challenging, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things you told me is that, Dad, I've seen this trajectory in your books. First it was around success and money. Then it was around getting ahead. And then all my books turned into relationships and communication.
Yeah.
Because they're bloody hard.
Yeah.
And so that's connection to people. The next one is connection to purpose. When you get up in the morning and go, woohoo, I think we need connection to purpose.
I like that. Yeah.
And your TED Talk was connecting to passion and making sure that you have passion. I think a lot of people have lost their passion.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to find their passion. So that passion is being replaced by shoes,
Yeah.
in your case, or online gaming.
Funny how you say that. Even when I was working, I was doing everything right from eating, sleeping, no coffee, but I was still tired. And I was still just not having energy because I wasn't working on things that connected me to my purpose. Although it was an amazing opportunity, it didn't give me that energy and the joy. And when I started just even creating things online, I realized that I got my energy back.
So here's the funny thing. I think for a lot of men, and we're speaking men, but this happens with women as well, is that when we don't have a purpose, we chase money.
Yeah.
Because you can see your bank statement.
Yeah, it's increasing. Yeah.
You go, oh my God, I'm living my purpose.
Yeah.
It's increasing, but it's not who I am. So I went from private equity to running a leadership firm.
Yeah.
And that was like the dumbest thing out. I've spent 6 years going to university to learn how to do well in private equity and funds management and management consulting. I'm leaving all that.
Yeah, and you were at the cusp of when almost everything gets amazing in private equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first fund is you make your teeth. The second fund, you know what you're doing. The third is where you really make your money.
Yeah.
And I felt, am I really using my life force to something that's really worthwhile?
Yeah.
So figuring out my purpose and my calling, not just my career, was just amazing.
Yeah.
And the last one is connection to planet. And I think that's what a lot of people, because we live in cities, we just don't have that connection to planet.
Yeah.
And indigenous cultures had that in spades. They knew what they were doing. So those 4 things, connection to self.
Yeah.
Connection, making sure that you're personally connected. Next one, your people connection. We're not taught this. And you these days, a lot of men these days just swipe left and swipe right to get a date. We had to go up to somebody that we didn't know.
Have a conversation.
And have a conversation.
Yeah.
Make them feel special. Convince them to give them our number, right?
Yeah.
Then connection to purpose. Do you get up in the morning and go, woohoo, I'm ready to go?
Yeah.
The last one is connection to the planet.
Yeah. I like that connection to planet. It's a really interesting thing. I think there's a Japanese tradition which is called nature bathing. So it's when you go out to nature and you spend time just in a forest or a national park. It's quite interesting where Monday to Friday, most of us are just in the city. We're in skyscrapers and air-conditioned buildings that are always so cold for some reason. I'm curious to know, how often do you think people should be spending time in nature and reconnecting? And do you think people have lost their art of that when the whole world is now interconnected?
Yeah, so I think, I go mountain biking.
Yep.
And I go bushwalking.
Yep.
And to a certain degree, that's a spiritual practice for me.
Yeah.
For me, going to a temple doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's noisy, it's loud. But being in the middle of the bush, especially the Australian bush, I get a sense of deep connection with the planet. I think you need to do it every day.
Yeah.
But I think now what I've learned about dopamine is that you can get so addicted to dopamine when we're hyperstimulated. And I see that with you, and I see that with your generation, is that you're always on your frickin' phones. Like, I see a lot of older people as well. But my worry is what is it doing to your brain?
Yeah.
So what we do know is the neuropathy or the neurology of addiction is kicking in a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, how do I know this? Go to a kid, try and take away like
Yeah, iPad or
their phone, and you see it like mom and dad are at a restaurant, potentially.
Yeah.
The kids on their phone swiping,
Yeah.
and then now it's time to go, they take away their phone, they go ballistic.
Yeah.
That's an addiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we used to give you a book,
Yeah.
we didn't have that same angst
Yeah.
that I see
Trying
a
to
lot of
take it,
parents
yeah.
get.
I'm curious. I think 2024 though is going to be an interesting year because it's the launch of, let's say, Apple Vision Pro, where it's pretty much the metaverse is coming to you. And then for some reason, every single person I know is now running at 5 a.m. in run clubs. So you've got this idea of two different parts. You've got where people are now striving for connection. Run clubs are the new dating sites. And then you've got people who just want the Vision Pro to come out. There'll be gaming and there's technology. Do you think that there'll be a time where there'll be a distinction where people go back to finding ways to connect, or this metaverse and the interconnection and social media we're just headed straight down this one path?
The short answer is, I think it's going to be a mix of both.
Yeah.
It's, when you got a Kindle. I've got a Kindle, you've got a Kindle, but you're still reading books, which is weird. I like reading on my Kindle and you like reading books,
yeah.
because you're on your screen the whole time.
Yeah, it's a difference and sort of a break from being on your phone all day.
But what I do know is that, and I think this is really important for parents, is that there's a lot of young people that are not doing too well socially.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to struggle socially, you're going to go back to being on online gaming in front of your computer, and you're not going to develop those relationships.
Yeah.
And it's tough, it's scary. The social anxiety is real. So I think for parents, it's really important to orchestrate ways. And I used to do it with you. Do you remember?
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
So, Kailash, do you remember when I used to ask you to say hello to the strangers? Retail assistants, shop assistants.
Yeah.
And you didn't like it?
No.
But now tell me, how's that impacted you?
It's good. It means I can go up to almost anyone and have a conversation with them. Yeah.
So it's such a small thing. So if you're a parent, I'd highly recommend you getting your kids to going up to, I know you're not supposed to talk to strangers, but going up to people that work in a shop or to pay the bill at a restaurant or something like that, and get them to say, hey, how are you? And start a conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. And we're really focused on making sure that we give you the best ideas and research that's coming out of this area. If you'd like to know more, let us know in the comments. We'd love to do the research. We'll come back to you and tell you what we found from the research. I hope that helps. On that note, stay joyful.